Hello everyone, welcome to Roshan Tech. Over the course of the next hour, we are going to be diving deep into a topic that is absolutely foundational to everything we do in academia, industry, and guide frankly the advancement of human knowledge as a whole. We are going to be discussing the introduction to research methodology. If you have a look at our very first slide here, you will see a broad overview of what we mean when we talk about research. The slide rightly defines research as a systematic pursuit of knowledge that is characterized by a structured approach to inquiry. I want us to really pause and think about that word systematic. It is crucial. We are not just having a quick browse on the internet or a casual chat over a cup of tea. When we do research, we are employing a highly structured, rigorous, and carefully planned approach. It transcends information's gathering. It is not just about collecting facts. Just think about one might collect stamps. Rather, it aims to uncover completely new insights and fundamental truths. For the PhD students and early career researchers joining us in the room today, I cannot stress enough how vital this is. Understanding these core objectives, these motivations, and these methodologies is exactly what will define your effective research practices moving forward. By truly getting to grips with these elements early on, you can massively enhance your research capabilities. Ultimately, this allows you to contribute something highly meaningful and original to your respective fields. I just want to speak outside the slide text for a moment to provide some context. Let us think about the history of human progress. Every single major breakthrough, whether it was the discovery of penicillin or the mapping of the human genome, began with a structured approach to inquiry. It began with someone looking at the world and deciding that mere observation wasn't enough, they needed a system. We must recognize that the structured approach to inquiry mentioned here is what separates a professional researcher from an enthusiast. An enthusiast might read widely and have strong opinions. But when we think about, when we come to a researcher, researcher follows a documented, repeatable system. This means defining variables, setting up controls, and acknowledging biases. When you present here, here your findings at a conference, the audience isn't just looking at what you found, they are critically examining how you found it. Therefore, mastering this systematic pursuit is the cornerstone of your academic credibility. It is the key to unlocking funding, publishing in high impact journals, and also establishing yourself as a leading voice in your own discipline. We are here to learn how to take our natural human curiosity and channel it into a rigorous scientific process that can withstand scrutiny and peer review. So, I invite you all to join us on this intellectual journey today. Our goal for the next hour is to deepen your understanding of research, appreciating it as both a rigorous science and a art. Actually, it is an art because it requires creativity and intuition. But it is a science because it demands discipline, precision, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. We have a massive amount of ground to cover. We have a massive amount of ground to cover today. So without further delay, let us crack onto the next slide. Shall we? We are officially beginning our deeper dive by establishing a firm definition of research. Now you might be thinking to yourselves, well, I already know that research is, but it is always incredibly helpful to ground ourselves in a formal, agreed upon definitions before we get into the complex methodologies. As you can see on the screen behind me, research is fundamentally defined as a systematic search for pertinent information on specific topics. But I absolutely love the second part of this definitions. It goes on to characterize research as both an art of investigations and a voyage of discovery. An art of investigations and a voyage of discovery. Just pause and just think about that phrase for a moment. A voyage of discovery. It implies that we are setting sail into the unknown, pushing the boundaries of what humanity currently understands. We aren't just looking at what is already there. We are navigating uncharted waters, seeking out new intellectual continents. When we view research as a discovery, we realize that is completely transcends data collection. Anyone can collect data. A computer can collect data in a fractions of a second. But as human researchers, our true aim is to uncover new insights and knowledge. We are trying to find the hidden patterns, the unasked questions, and the unexpected answers that no algorithms could simply guess. And why do we do this? Why do we do this? What is the point of this exhausting voyage? We do it so that we can contribute to the broader scientific community. Furthermore, contributing to the broader scientific community is an act of incredible collaborations. You are providing pertinent information that someone else, perhaps decades from now, might use to solve a problem we cannot even conceive of today. Your voyage of discovery is interconnected with thousands of other voyages happening simultaneously across the globe. Every single paper you publish, every thesis you write, every experiment you conduct is a new brick in the grand edifice of human knowledge. To give you an example from outside of our slide material, imagine you are researching the effects of climate change on local agriculture. If you merely go out and record the temperature every day, you are just collecting data. But if you take that temperature data, cross-reference it with the crop yield over the last 50 years, and discover a brand new correlations that helps farmers adapt their planting schedules, that is uncovering new insights. This is the art of investigations in action. It requires a creative mind to look at raw numbers and see a story waiting to be told. Therefore, as we go through the rest of these slices, I want you to be actively keep that spirit of the voyage alive in your minds. It is a hard work, absolutely. There will be days when the literature review feels endless. There will be days when the literature review feels endless. And when you feel like you are sinking rather than sailing, when you feel like you are sinking rather than the sailing, but at its core, it is an incredibly exciting adventure into the unknown. Again, I'm just going to speak broadly outside the text. Remember that remember that every grade investigator started exactly where you are today, armed with the questions and the determinations to search for a pertinent information. Let us embrace both the art and the science of this endeavor as we move forward. Right. Let us transition smoothly to the slide 4, which continues our introductions by focusing specifically on the core purpose of all this hard work. We have just established that research is a grand voyage. But what is the actual mechanical purpose of what we do on a day by day basis in the lab or the library? Mechanical purpose of what we do on a day to day basis in the lab or the library. According to our slides, the core purpose of research is to collect and analyze data. Now, data can be absolutely anything. It can be complex numerical data set from a chemistry experiment, qualitative transcripts from a series of psychological interviews, or a historical text gathered from dusty archives in a museum. But simply collecting and and analyzing that data is not the end of the story. The vital takeaway here on the slide is that we do this enhance our understanding. I always tell my students that if you are merely transporting informations from one source to another, you are not you aren't actually doing research. Transporting informations from one source to another aren't actually doing a research. You are just doing administration. Think about it. If you read 5 different textbooks and simply summarize what they say in a Word document without adding your own critical analysis, you won't enhance the world's understanding. You have just saved us a bit of reading time. To research requires us to process, digest, and elevate the informations we gather. We must apply our own critical lens to the data. We must ask why and how rather than just what. Again, I'm just telling, we must ask why and how rather than just ask what. When we collect and analyze data properly, we pull out the meaning behind the numbers or the word and That is where the real value lies. Again, to use an outsider example to illustrate this point, specially, if you are conducting a survey on consumer behavior, transporting informations mean just telling us that 60% of people bought a product. Enhancing understanding means analyzing that data to tell us why that 60% made that choice, how it relates to their socio-economic background, and what it predicts for future market trends. That is the core purpose in action. So, whether you are looking at a massive spreadsheet with 10,000 rows of data or a single profound case study, your core purpose remains exactly the same: to enhance understanding and bring new light to the subject at hand. This is why the data analysis phase of any project is often the most time consuming and cognitively demanding. It is not just what running a statistical test in software. It is about interpreting. It is about interpreting the output in a way that provides genuine value. When you successfully enhance understanding, you are effectively shining a light into an obviously dark corner of human knowledge. You are providing clarity where there was confusion. I urge you all to embrace this core purpose passionately. Do not shy away from the hard analytical work, because that is where your true impact lies. Whenever you feel lost in a project, come back to this slide and ask yourself, am I enhancing understanding right now, or just shuffling papers? The answer to that questions will guide you back onto the right path. Moving swiftly along to the slide, moving swiftly along to the slide 5, we are going to shift our focus slightly to look at the specific objectives of research. What are we fundamentally trying to achieve when we set out on our voyage of discovery? First and foremost, as you can see highlighted prominently here on the screen, it is all about discovering answers. Human beings are naturally curious creatures. We look at the world around us and we are filled with an endless streams of questions. We know that in the realms of academia and industry, we cannot just rely on guesswork, intuitions, or a common sense to find our answers. Common sense has historically told us that the earth was flat. Instead, professional research aims to uncover these answers through systematic scientific procedures. That phrase, scientific procedures, is our ultimate safety net. It means that whether you are studying the intricacies of quantum physics, the behavioral pattern of marine life, or the themes in medieval literature, you are employing a rigorous, tested, and transparent method to find your answers. This systematic approach is what ensures that our findings are robust, reliable, and valid. If someone else across the world wants to check our work, they can follow our documented procedures and see exactly how we arrived at our conclusions. By relying on this specific framework, we are actively enhancing understanding and contributing to knowledge in various fields. It is about building a consensus based on hard empirical evidence rather than mere opinion or hearsay. I prefer to give another real world example not found in the text. Think about the massive global effort that goes into medical research then when scientists when scientists are trying to discover answers about a new virus. They don't just guess. They run double blind placebo controlled trials. Those are the systematic scientific procedures at work. And the answers they discover literally save lives. While your research might not always be a matter of life and death, the principle remains exactly the same. We adhere to these strict scientific procedures because they are the only reliable way to discover true answers and make a genuine, lasting contribution to our respective fields. We must also appreciate that discovering answers often leads to discovering even more complex questions. That is the beauty of scientific procedures. They often doors to new rooms we didn't even know existed. When you contribute to knowledge in various fields, you are expanding the horizon of what is possible. So, embrace the rigorous procedures, embrace the scrutiny. It is through this exacting process that we build a reliable factual foundations or a future generations to build upon, ensuring our work has a legacy. Every objectives you set in your research proposal must ultimately tie back to this desire to uncover answers. If your objective doesn't clearly state what unknown you are trying to eliminate, then it isn't a robust research objective. We are in the business of replacing ignorance with knowledge, one systematic step at a time. We are going to build upon what we just discussed regarding discovering answers. We know our objective is to find answers, but not all questions are built the same, are they? We know our objective is to find answers, but not all questions are built the same, are they? Therefore, the objectives of our research must be categorized into distinct types. As you can see on the slide behind me, these objectives are generally categorized into 4 main areas: exploratory, descriptive, diagnostic, and hypothesis testing. Each of these serves a vastly distinct purpose in the research process. Now the slide simply gives us these 4 categories. But if you will allow me to step outside the text for a few minutes. Sure, thank you. I think it is absolutely paramount that we break down exactly what of each of these means in a practical sense. Let us start with the exploratory research. This is what we do when we are venturing into completely unknown territory. Imagine a brand new phenomenon has just occurred. Perhaps a completely unprecedented shift in the global economy or a new social media platform that is completely altering teenage communications because it is so new. We don't even know what questions to ask it. Exploratory research is about testing the waters, gaining a preliminary understanding, and formulating the very questions that will guide future. More structured studies. It is the academic equivalent of scouting ahead. Next, we have descriptive research. Once we have done our exploratory scouting, we might want to simply describe what is happening, the objective. The objective here is to paint an incredibly accurate, detailed picture of a particular individuals, a demographic group, or a specific situations. A classic example of this would be the national census. We aren't testing a theory, we are just rigorously documenting what is at this exact moment in time. Then we move into diagnostic research, which I always think is guide fascinating category. Think of a medical doctor. Think of a medical doctor diagnosing a patient. The patient has a specific set of symptoms, and the doctor's objectives is to find out the underlying cause. In research, we do the exact same thing. If a company suddenly sees a massive drop in employee retention, a researcher will come into diagnose the root cause of that specific problem. We are looking for the why behind a known issue. Finally, we arrive at a hypothesis testing research, which is perhaps what most people picture when they think of a scientist in a laboratory. This is where we have a very specific theory, a hypothesis about how two or more variables interact. We set up highly controlled experiments or statistical models to test if your theory holds true under intense scrutiny. Are we right or are we wrong? Understanding these four categories is not just an academic exercise, it is the very foundations of your research design. If you try to apply a hypothesis testing methodology to an exploratory objectives, your research will fall apart completely. You must align your methods with your core objectives. So whenever you sit down to start a new project, I urge you to look at this list and ask yourself honestly, which of these four am I actually trying to achieve? Getting that right from day one will save you a massive amount of headaches down the road. We transition from the academic categorizations of objectives to the very tangible real world impacts of our work. The practical goal of research we must discuss the practical goals of research. Now, it is guide easy. Particularly in academia, we get completely lost in the theoretical sides of things. We can spend months debating methodology and statistical significance. But at the end of the day, we have to ask, what is the actual point? As our slide beautifully summarizes, research ultimately seeks to solve real life problems, uncover hidden truths, and create innovative tools. Let us dissect at that first point, solving real life problems. We are not just conducting research, so we can sit in a proverbial ivory tower and pat each other on the back over a cup of tea. We are doing this because society faces massive, urgent challenges. Speaking outside our provided slides to give you some context. Think about the engineers working on sustainable energy solutions, or the agricultural scientists developing crops that can withstand severe droughts. Their research is directly aimed at ensuring humanity can thrive in the face of a changing climate. By applying our rigorous systematic procedures to these issues, we are actively addressing profound societal needs. Secondly, the slide mentions uncovering hidden truths. Uncovering hidden truths. This is the incredibly powerful phase often. The way the world appears on the surface is completely different from how it actually operates underneath. Human biases, historical inaccuracies, and complex economic systems can obscure the truth. Rigorous research acts as a magnifying glass. For example, and gain drawing on broader academic history, here sociological research has frequently been responsible for uncovering systematic inequalities in the workplace or the justice system that were completely hidden from the general public. By uncovering these truths, researchers provide undeniable evidence required for policymakers to enact meaningful, lasting change. Furthermore, our practical goals includes the creations of innovative tools. We often think of research merely as written papers, but very often the output of our research is a tangible tool that advances our capabilities. This could be revolutionary, a new piece of medical imaging software, a more efficient algorithms for processing data, or even a brand new pedagogical framework for teaching children with learning difficulties. These tools directly impact the daily lives of professionals and the public alike. Ultimately, at the slide concludes, all of these practical goals work together to achieve a dual outcome, addressing societal needs was simultaneously advancing scientific inquiry. It is a wonderfully symbiotic relationship. The needs of society dictate what questions we ask, and the rigorous process of scientific inquiry ensures the answers we provide are actually robust enough to solve those problems. So, I want to encourage every single one of you in the room today as you formulate your research questions. Never lose sight of a practical goal. Ask yourself whose lives will be made better by the answers I find. Ask yourself whose life will be made better by the answers I find. Brilliant. Let us crack onto the slide 8. This brings us to a topic I am always incredibly keen to discuss: motivation in research. We have spent the last half hour talking about what research is and what we hope to achieve by doing it. But let us be brutally honest for a moment. Research is incredibly demanding. It requires long hours. It involves a substantial amount of critical feedback, and things very rarely go right on the first attempt. Things very rarely go right on the first attempt. So, what on earth drives us to put ourselves through it? If we look at the slide, the first motivation. The first motivation listed is a very practical one. The desire for a research degree. We should never shy away from the professional realities of our chosen field. As the text rightly points out, many researchers pursue advanced degrees like PhD to significantly enhance their career prospects. In today's highly competitive job market, both in academia and in the private sector, holding a research degree sets you apart as someone who can handle complex, unstructured problems. Furthermore, earning that degree and publishing your findings is how you gain credibility. Credibility is the absolute currency of the research world. If you want people to listen to your ideas, you need to establish that you are a rigorous, trustworthy investigator. If you want people to listen to your ideas, you need to establish that You are a rigorous, trustworthy investigator. And let us not forget the financial aspect highlighted here on the slide. Accessing funding opportunities. Accessing funding opportunities. I guide frankly outside provided tax. Research is expensive. I'm speaking guide frankly outside provided the text here. Research is expensive. Whether you need to laboratory equipment, travel grants to access historical archives, or a funding to pay survey participants, you need money. Grant committees award fundings to researchers who have proven their capability. Grant committees award funding to researchers who have proven their capability. Therefore, the desire to establish that credibility and secure funding is a massive, incredibly valid motivations that impacts your entire professional trajectory. However, if career advancement and funding were our only motivations, I suspect a great number of us would burn. Number of us would burn out incredibly quickly. There is a deeper, much more intrinsic drive at play, which brings us to the second point on our slide, the challenge. The challenge of unsolved problems. Human beings are, by our very nature, puzzle solves. We absolutely had it when things don't make sense. We absolutely had it when things don't make sense. The intellectual challenge of addressing unresolved issues is a profoundly powerful motivator. There is an itch in the back of a researcher's mind when they encounter a gap in the literature or a problem that previous generations haven't been able to crack. It is that challenge that drives true innovation. There is an itch in the back of a researcher's mind when they encounter a gap in the literature or a problem that previous generations haven't been able to crack. It is that very big challenge that drives to true innovation. We want to be the ones to finally put the missing piece of the puzzle into the place. This relentless pursuit of the unknown is what has contributed to the most significant advances across various fields of study throughout human history. We don't just want an easy ride. We actively seek out the intellectual challenge because the harder the problem, the more satisfying it is to finally solve it. Right. Moving forward, next slide, we are going to continue our discussions on what motivates us to undertake this grand voyage of discovery. We have covered the practical career benefits and the thrill of the unsolved puzzle. But we must also acknowledge the sheer joy of the work itself. As you can see on the first bullet point here, a massive driver is the intellectual joy derived from creativity. Now, people often make a mistake of thinking that research is purely analytical, that it is just about staring at a spreadsheet and running statistical formulas until your eyes water. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Research is an incredibly creative endeavor. Designing a completely new experiment, formulating a novel theoretical framework, or finding a completely new way to interview a difficult demographic requires a massive amount of imagination. And enhancing in this creative side of research provides a profound level of intrinsic satisfaction. To use an analogy not found on our slide, just think of an artist finishing a painting or a musician composing new song. When a researcher finally brings together a disparate set of data points to form a beautiful, elegant new theory, the feeling is exactly the same. It fosters a deep sense of accomplishment that intrinsic joy. That eureka moment when everything suddenly clicks into place is highly addictive. It is the very thing that encourages us to dive back in and further explore even more complex topics. Once you have experienced the joy of creating new knowledge, you simply want to do it again and again. The second major motivations highlighted on our slide today is particularly modern one, curiosity. Curiosity about new technologies. We are currently living in an era of unprecedented technological advancement. Naturally, researchers are often driven by an intense, burning desire to explore these emerging technologies. We don't just want to use the new gadgets, we want to completely dismantle them, understand how they work, and most importantly, understand their societal implications. Once again, I'm just stepping outside the slide text for a moment to give a highly relevant example. Just look at the explosion of research currently being done on artificial intelligence. Researchers aren't just looking at the code, They are exploring how artificial intelligence will impact jobs, educations, ethics, and human psychology. This deep seated curiosity about the tools of tomorrow leads directly to groundbreaking discoveries and incredible new applications. So as we wrap up this section on motivation, I want you to reflect on your own driving forces. Are you here for a career progression? Are you here because you simply cannot leave an unsolved puzzle alone? Are you seeking that creative joy? Or are you fascinated by the future of technology? In truth, for most of us, it is a combination of all four. Recognizing and embracing these motivations is absolutely vital. Because when you hit the inevitable roadblocks in your research journey, it is this underlying passion that will give you the resilience to keep pushing forward. Now, if I am being completely honest with you all, this particular slide addresses a massive area of confusion. I have sat in on countless PhD vivas and panel reviews where early career researchers have completely mixed up these two terms. We are looking at the critical distinctions between research methods and research methodology. They sound similar. Confusing them is a hit like confusing the ingredients in a recipe with the actual art of cooking itself. Let us break this comparison table down piece by piece. Starting with the definitions and focus, the text tells us that our research methods focus firmly on the specific techniques and tools that we use to gather our data. That simply, these are the practical operations a researcher performs on a day-to-day basis. Research methodology, on the other hand, is concerned with your overarching strategy and the entire theoretical framework of the research. It represents the holistic way in which they systematically solve our research problem. When we look at their nature, research methods involve highly specific step-by-step procedures to obtain information. Methodology fundamentally deals with the theoretical and philosophical underpinning of the research. Speaking entirely outside of the text provided on your view, this philosophical underpinning is what we in academia call epistemology and ontology. Essentially, how we know what we know and what we believe the nature of a reality actually is. Your methodology is your philosophical stance. Therefore, when we consider scope, it is guide straightforward. A research method is essentially just a subset of research methodology. Methodology has a much broader scope because it includes not only the methods themselves but also the fundamental logic and reasoning behind exactly why those specific methods were chosen in the first place. If you are writing a methodology chapter, you cannot just list what you did. You must rigorously defend why you did it. Moving down the table to function, the function of a research method is to determine the specific types of data to be collected and analyzed. Meanwhile, the function of research methodology is to act as your strategic guide. It guides the research in selecting the most appropriate research methods for the complex tasks at hand. In relation to the overall process, methods are tied entirely to practical executions and immediate outputs. Methodology, however, relates to the broader theoretical research process and is a concept applicable across many different types of studies. Finally, our slide gives us some very clear examples to lock this knowledge in. Examples of research methods include conducting surveys, carrying out structured interviews, running experiments, or conducting field observations. Examples of research methodology include the broader paradigms: qualitative methodology, quantitative methodology, and mixed methods. Mixed methods methodology. So I implore you, the next time you are asked about your methodology, do not just give a list of your methods. Next time when you are asked about your methodology, don't just give a list of your method. You must explain the grand architectural blueprint, that holds those methods together. Types of research approaches: descriptive, analytical. Moving seamlessly onto the slide, we are going to dive into the specific types of research approachable available to us. This is where you decide the fundamental angles from which you are going to tackle your specific problem. We have a few comparisons to get through in this section. Starting with descriptive versus analytical research. Let us look at descriptive research first. As the slide outlines, this research primarily focuses on fact-finding of various kinds. Its main objective is to accurately represent the characteristic of a particular individual, demographic group, or a situation. It fundamentally answers the question, what is? By carefully describing the current state of affairs, to accomplish this descriptive research usually involves collecting completely fresh primary data. You might do this through massive surveys, detailed observations, or structured questionnaires. Just allow me to step outside the provided text to give you a very clear practical example of this. Think about a national census. The government sends out a survey to every household in the UK to find out who lives where, what they do for a living, and how old they are. They are not testing a grand scientific theory. They are simply painting an incredibly detailed factual picture. Factual picture of what the country looks like on that exact day. That is descriptive research in its purest form. Now let us flip the coin and look at analytical research. Analytical research, this is where the researcher typically uses facts and information that are already available to perform a deep analysis. The primary objective here is to make a critical evaluations of the material by deeply analyzing those existing facts. So instead of just asking what is, analytical research asks why is it? Instead of just asking what is, the analytical research asks why is it? Or how did it come to be? How did it come to be? It seeks to examine the underlying causes and the hidden relationship between variables. Consequently, it analyzes existing data, historical facts, and available information specifically to test or proven a hypothesis. Again, to us an example outside for our slide, let us take that census data we just talk about. If an economist takes the last 5 decades of descriptive census data, combines it with the historical inflation rates, and runs a complex statistical model to figure out exactly why the middle class has shrunk on a specific region. They are doing analytical research. They are taking the what and firstly digging for the why. It is incredibly important to understand that neither of these approaches is inherently better than the other. They are simply different tools for different jobs. In fact, most massive multi-year PhD projects will actually start with a descriptive phase to establish the baseline facts before moving into a rigorous analytical phase to figure out what those facts actually mean. Right. Then turning our next slide, we have our second major comparison regarding research approaches. Applied research versus fundamental research. This comparison is heavily tied to the motivations and practical goals we discussed earlier in the hour. Let us start with applied research. As the definitions of the screen states, this is research aimed specifically at finding practical solutions to immediate issues. It is about solving the pressing problems we face in our day-to-day lives. Its primary purpose is to identify workable solutions to both scientific and non-scientific problems that are currently faced by society, governments, or a specific commercial organization. As a result, the nature of this pursuit is highly action-oriented and practical. The researcher is striving to ensure that the outcome of their work directly enhances the quality of human life through specific problem solving. Once again, I'm just stepping outside the slide to illustrate this. Imagine civil engineers working to develop a new type of flood defense system for coastal towns in the UK, United Kingdom. They are taking scientific principles and actively applying them to stop people's homes from being destroyed next winter. Their work is immediate, practical, and heavily applied. On the other side of the spectrum, we have fundamental research, which is also commonly referred to as pure research or a basic research. The definition here is profoundly different. It is focused on gathering knowledge purely for its own sake. The primary aim is to increase our broad theoretical understanding of a phenomenon by discovery, interpreting, or revising overarching theories. The nature of this pursuit is driven almost entirely by intellectual curiosity and academic inquiry. As the slide beautifully pursued it. It is a movement from the known to the unknown. It is movement from the known to the unknown. A true voyage of discovery means to establish completely new knowledge. To give you an outside example of fundamental research, think of the theoretical studying the Higgs boson, particle or a dark matter. Think of the theoretical physicist studying the Higgs boson particle on dark matter. Finding out how dark matter works probably isn't going to fix inflation or a curve a disease tomorrow. Cure a disease tomorrow. But it expands humanity's fundamental understanding of the universe. Now, speaking strictly from an academic career perspective outside of our tax, you will find that funding bodies often lean heavily towards applied research because they want to see a tangible return. They want to see a tangible return on their investment. However, we must never forget that applied research is utterly impossible without a fundamental research. You cannot apply a scientific theory to save a coastal town if a purely curious researcher hasn't first discovered the theory of fluid dynamics. They are two sides of the same brilliant scientific coin. We reach what is arguably the most famous divide in all of research methodology: quantitative versus qualitative research. This is where researchers often divide themselves into two distinct camps. Though I personally believe the best researchers respect both paradigms equally, let us dissect what these terms actually mean. First, let us look at qualitative research as defined here. It primarily deals with the measurement of numerical data and specific quantities. It is an overarching approach under the umbrella of research methodology that specifically guides how we select methods for collecting and analyzing hard numerical data. When you are doing quantitative work, you are dealing with statistic probabilities, absolute measurements, and highly structured data sets. Once again, if I may add a bit of context outside of the slide, quantitative research is incredibly powerful because it allows us to test a hypothesis on a massive scale. If you want to know if a new drug works, we don't just ask 3 people. We give it to 10,000 people and run statistical regressions to prove its efficacy beyond a shadow of a doubt. It provides us with cold, hard, objective facts. Conversely, we have qualitative research. The focus here is entirely different. It focuses on understanding underlying reasons, opinions, attitudes, beliefs, and deeply personal experiences. It seeks to answer complex questions of why people think or behave in a certain way. It seeks to answer the complex questions of why people think or why people behave in a certain way. In the context of research methodology, it guides our selection of methods tailored specifically for exploring these deeply subjective human elements for opinions and attitudes. Once again, I'm speaking broadly outside the provided text once more. A massive misconceptions. A massive misconceptions amongst junior researchers is that qualitative research is somehow easier because it doesn't involve complex maths. That is absolute rubbish. Qualitative research requires immense rigor. Sitting down with a dozen individuals who have experienced a unique trauma and conducting hour-long unstructured interviews generate thousands of pages of transcripts. The researcher then has to meticulously code that textual data, searching for hidden themes and psychological patterns. It is incredibly demanding, subjective work. So, which one do you choose? Well, it completely depends on your research objective. If you want to know how many people bought a product, you use quantitative methods. If you want to know how that product made them feel, you use qualitative methods. And increasingly the most robust studies employ a mixed methodology, leveraging the strengths of both numerical data and rich human narratives to paint a truly complete picture. And finally, the end of our allotted hour together, as we have reached the end of our visual materials, I have to use this final slide entirely as a wrap up everything we have discussed today and to leave you with some crucial final thoughts. We started this hour by defining research not just a task but as a systematic pursuit of knowledge. We explored the idea that research is both an art of investigations and a profound voyage of discovery. I really hope that phrase, a voyage of discovery, has stuck in your minds. Whether you are conducting a massive qualitative analysis of economic trends or a highly applied piece of engineering research, you are an explorer, you are actively pushing the boundaries of what the human race currently knows and understands. We also heavily discussed our core purpose. We reminded ourselves that our job is to collect and critically analyze data to actively enhance understanding rather than just shuffling information from one textbook to another. We do this to discover true answers through rigorous scientific procedures, ensuring that our findings can withstand the intense scrutiny of the global academic community. We looked at what motivates us, the practical desires for degree and funding, absolutely, but more importantly, the intellectual joy that comes from pure creativity and the challenge of unsolved problems. When the late nights in the lab When the late night in the lab or the library gets tough, it is that intrinsic motivations that will drag you across the finish line. Lastly, we navigated a complex terminologies. We established the vital differences between our methodology, the grand architectural plan, and your methods, the specific tools you use. We also explored how choosing between descriptive and analytical applied and the fundamental or quantitative qualitative approaches as the very foundations of setting up the robust successful project. I want to thank every single one of you for your time, your engagements, and your brilliant attentions today. Mastering these fundamental of research methodology, it is an absolute key to having a highly successful, deeply impactful academic or professional career. Go out there, trust your methodology, and enjoy the voyage of discovery. I reckon we have a few minutes, Jazz, so I would love to open the floor to any questions you might have.